Trading the foreign exchange market carries high risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Trading on margin, utilizing leverage can carry an even higher level of risk that can lead to a complete loss of investment funds. So before deciding to trade the foreign exchange market or using any of our software alert products, you should carefully and diligently consider your personal investment objectives, level of experience, and risk tolerance. There is a possibility that you could potentially sustain significant loss. You should not invest any capital or trade that you cannot afford to lose. It is your responsibility to be aware of and understand all risks associated with foreign exchange trading and to seek professional advice from an independent certified financial advisor if you have any doubts. Auvoria Prime does not exercise trading authority over your trades. You and you alone exercise discretionary trading authority over every trade.
All right, appreciate the helping me on the checks and balances here. I'm only running off of one screen. I'm normally running off of 5. So I'm just going to share the US. Let me just close out all these windows. Good. All right, so let's go into full screen mode here. So this is the entire last year of the US dollar. I've been talking exhaustively about this. Almost seems like a broken record, but just a continued downtrend we've had more in a few days as we're looking at just the daily chart here. I'm trying to expand this out. Not much more to say. I would encourage, it's just going to be a more abbreviated session, you guys to go back and see just an absolute mass load of videos I've shot on this for many periods of time over the last 3 weeks. So just looking at the daily chart, you know, we have it, as I'd mentioned, the rally on some of the hawkish and bullish comments that different Fed speakers came out, obviously with what Bullard came out and said we had a huge rally in the dollar, which may not be as easy to see here, but let's try this better. That rally on the comments, and you notice we've had just a couple of dojis the last 3 days on the dollar. So my sort of read into this, for lack of more time to be spent on this because I'm on vacation, I just see it breaking below this point and heading back down towards 89.50. There's been a lot of calls out there, just for what it's worth, in institutional land calling for a rise in this. I don't see it holding the moving average line at this point, and then just, you know, moving on to essentially 89.50, and then ideally, as I've been showing on the monthly charts, headed back down lower to the 86.85 area. Let me just, cool. One of the questions that was just asked, which is something I'm certainly wondering myself, is when will gold go back up? I think when a lot of the transitory inflation comments start to subside, you're going to begin to see that. Let me just jump over real quick. If you guys have any currency pairs you want me to look at, just let me know, because I'm not going to run through all of them today. I'll click on some of the big ones. So let's just take a look at Euro US dollar. So for what it's worth, one of the newer products that we have in the pipeline, I've been part of a beta test for one of the new products. It actually trades a lot of the USD major pairs only. And it does not trade it using a martingale system. And it's had just a really uncanny ability to pull out of some of these real drastic moves we've seen, especially recently with the big drop in the euro, mostly related obviously to the pin action off of, in a complete inverse correlation to, you know, what we saw moving down as far as the dollar. So let's take a look at the pound real quick. Same thing, some movements down related to it. Let's try to slide this over a little bit. There we go. Still inside a long, broad pattern. It's just a fair amount of balancing. It's, although interesting to note that the colors have changed slightly on some of the support and resistance points right here at 36 or one spot 36.77 area. Should be some pretty solid support for a potential bounce higher, given my thesis that the dollar continues to go down further. So let's take a look at the GBP CAD. Let's see. Same thing, tight range, daily chart. Notice we've moved fairly quickly down, obviously, with the general weakness we've seen in almost all pairs because of the rally of the dollar. Let's take a look at gold before I forget. It's gold spot, no surprise. So I think this week should be pretty interesting, even though the summer's typically a lot slower as far as big news releases or any sort of monetary policy or Fed speak. Although being surprising, if we just continue to get more of this transitory inflation talk out of the central bank, I think it's going to be um, quite rallying, if you will, for the dollar. So that's going to go against my sort of thoughts going forward. But gold's going to run damn near in tandem with what the dollar does, and as anything in dollar-based land, precious metals are going to sell off based upon that, and that's kind of what we've seen certainly over the last couple of days. Big picture on the weekly chart, though, you can see we've got some really solid support at 1763. Lesser in terms of the strength of the support. It's right under 1700 a troy ounce. And then obviously, ultimately, my goal, we're back up towards new highs here, just under the 2100 level. It's kind of what I'm seeing. No, I don't have a lot of time to get into that this weekend. So question was, you going to start showing more of your market profile charts? I will. It's a lot better to do this on the big system than it is on some weenie little laptop. So, but I mean, honestly, it's a difficult concept. And for those of you that are not familiar, I posted a ton of this. It's a little more of a sophisticated type of analysis. I put a PDF on the Telegram channel. It's probably about 30 or 40 different concepts to gain when it comes to market profile. I put a 5-page PDF together on that and hold a bunch of charts. It's actually really good. I'm going to start to bring more of that in terms of so let's take a look at US CAD. Had a request for that. I'll touch a little bit on Bitcoin as well before we're done. I want you guys to see how strength in the yen and then the strength in the dollar consequently moving back up into these Bollinger Bands here. Let's just get rid of the bands for now. All right, so US CAD, let me take a quick look at this. You can see the defined trend down that we're in right up against the top of that upper trend channel. Notice that was a pretty decent, I haven't drawn the lines, but I'm trying to just connect enough dots here. We're in a strong downtrend channel here on the weekly. If we drop back to the daily, so it was actually pretty decent resistance at the top of that trend channel. Let's drop back to the daily. Support still continues to be down in the 2038 area. And what else? Some pretty significant resistance here at 26, about the 2630 area, and much more significant resistance where we essentially broke from some fairly big defense of this whole 2850-ish area. So just keep that in mind as well. Jump back to the weekly again. Yeah, that's actually pretty decent resistance. All right, let's go into some questions here. Euro CAD, and then let's take a look at CAD CHF. So before I jump back into that, question was, what was the name of the squeeze zone indicator? It's just that. It's called squeeze zone. Here, I'll show you. Just go into indicators. You can have them in your favorites. See how it's called squeeze zone right here. Just if you can't find it via the actual indicator itself, just look it up via empirical FX. This is Dassan's handle and trading view. So Euro CAD, let's take a look at that next. I don't really talk much about Euro CAD. Okay, so just a quick peek at the Euro CAD on the weekly first. Yeah, that previous support line, the 4,600 area, is proving to be fairly solid on this move down on the weekly. Jump to the daily, super major support. This is sort of the cliff here, this whole 4320 area. Take a look at the daily. So we have a coiling pattern that's been forming down towards the bottom here, looking to break. I mean, obviously, this is all going to be dollar driven. You know, I mean, I would imagine it's almost 100% inversely correlated to these movements we're seeing in the dollar. So you're really going to have to pay closer attention to that and the other relation between dollar euro, dollar CAD before you take a look at this. I've talked extensively about the concept of pin action. And this is certainly something as far as using the leverage off those moves to understand where this one's going to head. But surprisingly enough, though, I mean, if you look at, I mean, a bigger move in relation to over the last couple of days, but still really tight range, even though the dollar completely shot up a bunch. And it's, you know, sort of holding pattern, if you will, up towards those movements up to the upper side. This has still stayed really tight. So there's certainly a chance for this to coil and blast out of that real tight range. You know, ideally blast lower, right, if the dollar's going up, but it's tough to call with this one because the Canadian's been pretty strong. It doesn't look like it in this, looking at this chart, but just look longer term on this. For the lack of too much sunlight on my screen here, that's pretty much what I see here. Let's take a look. That one. Let's take a look at CAD CHF. Weekly first, real big. Just let me hide these. Real big area up here, 76. This is major resistance at this level. Spot 76, 10-ish area, you'll call it. Anyway, we all the way up to spot 76, 700-ish area. Take a look at the daily. Notice a very similar to the coiling we saw at the bottom. We have the opposite concept of just essentially moving out of a good basing pattern, complete break, total trend up, and then obviously a larger balance, auctioning back and forth between highs and lows throughout this section. Now we're coming back down towards the lower. Yeah, the question I just got was, you know, did we violate this range down here? A little bit. You know, a lot of times, you know, markets can always make a peak below a particular area, and then if you see in a candle or two, you're back up above it. It just goes to continue to solidify the strength of this particular area. You know, some large institution or group or, you know, some sort of fund, they were out there defending this level. Yes, you're welcome. Notice how when we came up into this area on the daily, for CAD Swiss, we had we rode the moving average. I don't know if you can kind of see that once we sort of got back above support. We rode that green line here. Just simple moving averages. All right, let's take a look at the Forex calendar. Let's see what we got for next week. always make sure to move this forward to the next date. So tomorrow being the 27th, start of the week. Do keep in mind it is the end of the week. It is also a holiday here in the U.S. Our 4th of July, Independence Day. It's going to be, let me just take a look at the calendar here. It's going to be celebrated on Sunday, but this is a big holiday week for, especially with the pandemic restrictions being lifted, across most of the U.S. It's a pretty big week, so I wouldn't expect a lot of volume at this particular time. Essentially, if you've done well for the last 3 days, or actually for the next 4 days of the month, starting tomorrow, once the Forex markets open back up again, I would probably, take your money and run, right? Instead of sort of sticking around where volumes can be lower and volatility can be spiked out and get your ass handed to you in a lot of these lower volume holiday environments. So I would probably steer clear of both of these days. But let's just take a look at the calendar itself. Filter out all events, in my opinion, that aren't red folder, because it's the only ones that matter. You can see there's an Italian banking holiday on Tuesday the 29th. Thursday, we've got OPEC meetings. This should actually be pretty interesting what goes on. I mean, the price of oil is blasted up to about 73 a barrel. OPEC doesn't like it at that point typically. So that's when everybody starts to pull back from their type of purchasing and comes to purchasing from other countries. But essentially, it's a bank holiday in Canada. We got the manufacturing report coming out, but do keep in mind Friday, another reason to sort of stay away or, get out of town and get away from the trading systems. As you can see, we've got non-farm payrolls on Friday. Normally they'll push something like this off, but it is the first Friday of the month. So expect that report to come out. Could be a real doozy. Do keep in mind these times are all different depending on, you can always sync these directly with your guys' system, just clicking on the clock and sync them up before, so you know what time these news stories break. But what else do I want to say? Could be an issue here for GBP pairs. Governor Bailey speaking at noon. Just do one thing. I want to sync this up. Sync it up to Arizona time where we are here. To the forward week. And so 8:30 on Friday, 8:30 New York time on Friday. That's the time you want to be aware of as far as non-farm. Just make sure you're aware of that. I still continually see in a lot of the chat rooms, people just not paying attention to some of these red folder events and wondering why they go into drawdown on a particular sequence of trades that they're taking. It has a lot to do with always keeping an eye on that. All right, so if that's it for Q&A, let's just make this a mini session today. Everybody have a good week. Stay safe. Stay on the right side of this market. If you're not sure what's going on, or just understand all that stuff, just keep in mind that sitting in cash is a position, guys. So you don't have to trade. So let your hearts not be troubled. And everybody have a great week. May the trades be with you.